back. Always good to have Deb Faircloth with us from the Faith House. The holiday season, of course, is here. Not for everybody. It's a time of celebration, but not for everybody.
That's right. And regrettably, there are certain times when, if you're in a violent relationship, your risk of danger is higher than others. The holidays are one of those times, especially if you're in the process of leaving or ending that particular relationship.
Again, coming off of Dr. David Holcomb's interview, let's talk about Louisiana's rankings with domestic violence abuse.
Right. Well, we are almost invariably in the top 5 most lethal states for women and children. This year we're 4th. In the 16 years, soon to be 16 years that I've been doing this work, we've been 1st at least 3 times that I know of, and we generally float around 2nd or 3rd. And even when other states like Alaska, for example, have a higher ranking, even when they're number 1, they don't have as many homicide victims as we do.
Well, just in the news this week, 3 people in Independence, a murder-suicide as close as Vernon Parish, discovering more about murders there.
Right, exactly. And so what we would like to invite people to do is to look at their relationships with a critical eye. If they've been wondering if they're victims of domestic violence and if they really are at risk, they need to think about a few indicators. For example, has your abuser ever put his hands on your throat? Have you ever seen stars or passed out or wondered if you've passed out? Have you had a trip to the emergency room in the past year? Are you leaving the relationship, as I mentioned before? Are you, anytime that there's paperwork issued, there's an enhanced risk. So if there's a divorce paper that's filed or served, if there's a TRO, a temporary restraining order that's filed and served, and then those are times when child custody issues, even pregnancy can be a trigger. And of course, any date that has emotional significance, like Christmas or like the anniversary of something significant. Doesn't have to be a marriage anniversary, it can be the anniversary of a first date, whatever is significant to that relationship, then the potential for lethality goes higher.
Yeah, but if you're living in fear, there is help out there.
Absolutely. And the thing about our agency is we're not going to ever make anybody do anything. We're going to educate an individual about his or her rights and options, and then we will help them realize whatever goal they have in mind. Not everybody, for example, needs a restraining order, even if there's a high risk for lethality, because with some offenders, that restraining order might be the factor which pushes him over the edge and does indeed provoke the act that you're trying to prevent, the homicide itself.
But there is a safe house for these folks to go to.
There are several safe houses all over the state. The safe house for the agency that I work at is at a confidential location in Lafayette. It's a 45-bed shelter. There are others, regrettably, they're all within at least an hour's drive, but if you need safety, then call our office and we can certainly get you to safety. If you want to talk about the requirements for a restraining order, give us a ring. We can certainly discuss that with you. We can talk about your own individual situation and do a lethality assessment. There are ways that you can measure and predict whether a person is likely to follow through on his or her threats.
What about intervention before something happens? What about a couple that says, we realize this is not good, we need to get help?
Right. Well, we can only help the victim. We're strictly prohibited from working with people who are labeled batterers. We put our grant funds at risk, but we can certainly make suggestions and referrals. And again, I think education is the first step toward intervention, and we can do that individually, or we can do that for large groups, churches, schools, etc. And as always, everything we do, every service we perform, whether it's education or writing a restraining order, is free of charge and confidential.
There is a 24-hour crisis line.
That's right. 1-888-411-1333 is the statewide crisis line. And the cool thing about that is whatever area you are in, When you dial that number, it will ring to the domestic violence agency that is geographically closest to you, so help is near at hand.
But it's so important that you recognize the situation that you're in and go ahead and accept and admit and seek help.
Absolutely, absolutely. There's a woman in Independence, Louisiana, who was shot multiple times and ended up dead on a barroom floor, as did the gentleman friend that she was with just a few days ago. And so this is not just the work of fiction or the topic of a Lifetime movie. It is a very real fact of life in Louisiana. Regrettably so.
Deb, thanks so much for what you're doing, and thanks for coming and sharing this information.
Exactly. Always good having you, Deb.
Thank you. Appreciate you so much. Happy holidays to you as well.
More to come. Charles Neal joins us in a minute. We're going to tell you about the Louisiana History Museum.